Hey, everybody out there in internet land. We're having a lot of fun here trying to figure out why there was no audio through all of that. But anyway, hey, this is Jazz Roundtable number 8. It's sax night, and I'm stoked because these guys are all just amazing sax players. We've got a lot of great guys living out here. But let me bring them on. Oh, just before I forget, we're entirely tip-based, 100% tip-based here at Live at 0 BPM. If you want to give a tip, I'll put it up in the Twitch and Facebook, so you know how to do that. We'd really appreciate it. Live at 0 BPM on Venmo, and then live at 0bpm.com/tipjar on the website, and you just get takes you to PayPal, and you can do that. But let me get the guys in here. Where are they? Here we are. Hey guys. Oh, do I have to unmute you?
Hello.
Are we here?
Yeah, we're here. So welcome. We are here. We have Brandon Fields, Eric Marienthal, and Gary Meek. Oh, I didn't turn on the audio studio claps yet, so we'll applaud you guys later. But it's sax night, and let's see. Yeah. We're going to go through like we normally do in the show. I'm going to talk about some origin stories. You may remember Gary Meek from such episodes as Jazz Roundtable before, and he was also one of the guys that helped out when we were testing it as the socially distant show for a while. Great. Gary's up in Monterey area, and then Eric, you're South Orange County, right?
Uh-huh.
And Brandon is in studio. He's just to my left, about 20 feet away. So, but I'm glad you guys could all make it. But let's start, and just so you know, the order I put the guys in, it's not hierarchy. It's who said yes in what order. So Brandon was the first one that I
said
spoke
yes
to,
first,
and he said yes first. So he's in the pole position there. So it's nothing. It's not height. It's not anything else. But Brandon, why don't you tell us your origin story? How did you get into music?
Well, my parents were big fans. My mom played piano when she was a kid. I think up until she was a piano major in college, which she stopped when she had me. and my she played alto in high school a little bit too. So my dad was a big jazz fan, and he had all kinds of obscure collections. He liked those 78s with, or I think they were 70s with 2 songs on each side. He had a full, like he'd find one artist he liked, he'd have a whole Georgie Auld collection, and he had a Stan Kenton collection. That was great. And what they would do when I was a kid, they would go to garage sales and buy instruments and bring them home and put them on the wall outside my bedroom, and I'd come home after school and just pick something up and make some noise.
Oh, really?
And she started me on piano when I was 5, and then I played violin a little bit when I was 8, and started playing alto when I was 10.
That's great.
And it was good, and they were very supportive, and my mom she was hip enough to know that I was hearing music on the radio. So besides whatever classical literature I had, she would pick a book of Beatles tunes, and then she would put it in front of me and I'd play. And I still like the story of playing like Eleanor Rigby and listening, and I'm reading the typical sheet music that's in those books, and I looked at her, I said, "Mom, I don't think they didn't do this note in the recording." So she liked that.
So you fixed the book and sent it back to the publisher?
No, I just realized that it's not, that your ears rule.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you were starting out playing classical and...
not too much classical. I should say just regular beginning piano repertoire.
Okay. And then when you moved to the saxophone...
Saxophone, I was picking stuff up on the radio, and I felt pretty good. It was the easiest of all the instruments to get going, to make a sound on that didn't scare me or make me not want to play it again. And then so it was good throughout school. And then when I was in high school, I had a really great band director for the first year and a half at Santa Ana, and I grew up very, very close to where Eric is from. And so he turned me on to a teacher that I think Eric studied with too, Don Hawkins, at Fountain Valley, and as well as Doug Webb also studied with him. But I think they got a lot more out of it than I did. I quit after 3 lessons because I was also playing tennis of all things, and it was I wanted to play a little more tennis at that point. So
Wow.
And I just kind of I actually auditioned for the All-State. When you're in high school, what's that thing, Eric? Gary probably.
All Southern California high school.
Yeah, something like that. You send in an audition tape or something and you play. And
Right.
I'll never forget that Jimmy Johnson's wife Leslie Nita, she also played saxophone, and she's our age, and she got in the year that I didn't get in.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a good little story. And she still has her Mark 6 alto around it.
Wow.
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 Oh, then when did you get into playing jazz?
I was playing in some local Latin and top 40 bands when I was about 15, 16. And there were some pals of mine in Santa Ana, Melvin Davis and Gary Wing, and I met around that time. So we'd get together in the garage and jam a little bit and learn Stevie Wonder tunes. But there was a band called Los Chicos that the kids it was a father-son band. So there were two sons and the dad, and we'd play all the traditional real Mexican music, and then some Latin jazz a little bit. And the kids loved Tower of Power, so we'd mix it all up. And it was my first experience playing casuals. Was, we'd stretch these tunes, and you could blow on them anything as long as the groove felt good and people were dancing. Everybody was having a good time, and it wasn't until I put on a tuxedo and went to play a second chorus on "Girl from Ipanema" in Beverly Hills that the guy next to me is tapping my leg, and he goes, "No, one chorus only."
That's great. Now, Eric, how did you get into everything?
Well, actually, for me, it was more of a social thing. When I was as social as you are when you're 9 years old. But one of my really good friends, who lives right down the street from me now, all these years later, and I, we're sitting in the classroom, and the district band teacher came along and said that if anybody wants to join the band, start playing an instrument, you can. And we're going to have a little assembly. So we go up there, and they had, on the table, they had, trumpets and trombones and saxophones and flutes and clarinets and, drums or whatever. And I wanted to play the trumpet. That was my first choice. And I thought, that's a man's instrument, it's a trumpet. And so the teacher looked at me and said, "No, you can't play trumpet because you've got braces on, and you're gonna be a bloody mess 5 minutes later. So pick something else." And so I looked at my buddy and said, "Well, what do you think?" And we saw the alto saxophones, and neither of us had any idea what it sounded like, but we thought it looked really cool. So we said, "Oh, play that one, whatever that is." The saxophone. Oh, okay. And playing, and like Brandon said, that was in 4th grade when I was 9. And then the other instruments, like, limited piano and doubling I play, flute and clarinet, came later. And like Brandon said, I think the saxophone is the most forgiving one. And so, it would have been far easier. I wish he would have said, no, you got to play clarinet. If the world would have been far better if I had 3 years of clarinet under my belt before playing saxophone. But yeah, I studied with Don Hawkins, and he's still teaching now, still doing it, and all these years later. And then when I got to high school, I remember I had the sax I had rented was called a Majestic, and haven't seen one since.
Never seen it.
And so my band teacher says, you're starting to get pretty serious with this. You should buy a better instrument. You should buy a new good instrument. And so he writes it down, and he says, "Okay, take this to the store. Doug Brown, right? At California. Was that what it's called, Brandon? No, it became Anaheim Band, right?
Yeah, but I thought you got yours from L.A. Music. You didn't?
No.
I thought your dad went up there and got it because that's something I did. That was always a story I remembered. Was that we both got our Mark 6s around the same time, like when I was a sophomore in high school or something.
Oh, I know. I remember I got it from Doug Brown, wherever he was. Maybe it was a year or two ago. After
California band or California
right,
music.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Before it became Anaheim.
So I go to the store. And I borrowed the $420 from my dad that I ended up paying back, And I said, I opened the paper. I said, "Yeah, I want a Selmer VI, Mark 6, Mark VI." And he hands me this horn, the horn that I've been playing. And I've got other horns and gone through other horns, but this one, I was lucky. It was. Just I've played a lot of Mark 6s over the years, and this one just is my favorite. So
well, you should know it by now. It's like that's
yeah. You think I should know it by now? You would think by now.
Well, yeah, it is metal, so it's.
And then now on to you, Gary. Tell us where your musical life came from.
Oh, geez. Well, not Orange County. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, actually, and my family's all very musical. None of them did it for a profit. My sister became a music teacher, actually. She teaches at a private school in Calabasas called the Viewpoint School. And so usually every year I go down and I do an assembly for them and demonstrate all my instruments and stuff. But I started on piano when I was about 5 or 6. We had like a really crappy upright that was it was a half-step flat, so I developed kind of a really good relative, almost perfect pitch, but not quite. I could remember pitches, but I grew up thinking that B was C, because it was a half-step flat. Really bizarre. And when I started playing a piano that was in tune, I'm like, whoa! It like totally freaked me out. Yeah, I grew up. I started on piano, and I played piano all the way up till junior high school, and then I realized that there were these little Asian girls that could just read like crazy, both hands, And the reading on piano thing freaked me out, 2 hands, bass clef, treble clef. It was like, this is insane. I can never do this. I'll never be able to do this, So I want to play an instrument where I only have to read one note at a time. So my dad had an old swing record of Begin the Begin by Artie Shaw, and I thought, wow, that's cool. That's a cool sounding instrument. So I said, I'll play the clarinet. So I started on clarinet. I was about 12, I guess, 13. And then I played clarinet all through junior high and high school. I studied with a guy named John Sitar, actually. He was a session player in L.A. He was a great clarinet teacher. Wow. And then the reason saxophone came about was because I wanted to play in the jazz band, and you couldn't just play clarinet in the jazz band, so I had to take up saxophone, and somebody gave me his alto to play, and I just kind of I played it like pretty easily, pretty well, right away, and he was like, "Holy shit, man! You just, it seems so much easier than the clarinet in a way, because you push the button and it went up an octave instead of an octave and a fifth, So it was like, both octaves were the same thing. To me that was like, oh wow, cool, And little did I know the can of fucking the can of worms I was opening for myself. Yeah. That's how I got hooked. And then after high school, I had only been playing for like 8 or 9 months, so I was terrible, and the guys and I went to Cal State Northridge, and I auditioned for the Cal State Northridge band, and I wasn't good enough to make the D band, wow. when I was 18 or 19. But that very thing got my ass in gear. I went home and I literally started practicing like 7 hours a day, all day long. Wow. Have jam sessions at night, just learned how to rip my scales and arpeggios and transcribing solos, and I just got way better really fast because I needed to, because I was way behind. Like guys like Brandon and Eric were playing, when they were 12, 13, So by the time they were 18, they were probably pretty damn good, and I was like, but I caught up. It took me a minute, but I caught up, and so that's kind of how I my evolution to the saxophone began. I did keep the keyboard chops together, which turned out to be a really good thing, actually.
Well, yeah, because your first touring gig was keyboards, wasn't it?
Yeah, Dionne Warwick. Yeah,
that's a great story. Tell
you
us.
You guys know Pat Coyle, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Keyboard
player. Well. Yeah. Do you remember a guy? You remember Brandon? Ralph Skelton. I was his roommate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Pat lived in the house behind us there on Hartsook in North Hollywood, and the Dionne Warwick gig came up to Pat, and he didn't want it. So he offered it to me. And that's how I got it. And for me, it was like a godsend, because I was like scuffling in town doing 4 gigs, which are still probably paying $40 or $50.
Yeah.
But they, jazz gigs and bar gigs and stuff like that. And when that came along, it was like, oh, there's some money you can live on, And so I went, well, I'm not really a keyboard player, but it was just like second keyboards. There was a piano player who was like the MD who did all the heavy lifting. So I just played like Rhodes and string pads and stuff like that. And,
That's the exact right amount of keyboard to play.
Exactly. It's you need some chops, but you don't need to be, you don't need to be a MD type keyboard player to pull that off, And then I would like on Dion's show, she found I had saxophone, so she gave me like an 8-bar solo on one song, and that was the extent on that show. But cool. So it's always helpful for me. The keyboard thing has been so helpful for writing, because I can hear how something is going to sound a lot better than I could if I was just trying to. I can sit down and play chords, and I have chops. I mean, I actually do real gigs on piano now. I have a piano trio gig, man, acoustic piano trio gig.
I heard some of that. It's great.
Yeah, it's like it's. You tell me when this is going to happen, man. With a brand new Kawai grand piano that's tuned every week.
Wow.
How often is that going to happen? You know what I mean?
Enough.
And it's Spanish Bay, which is literally like, I don't know. It's probably like a half-hour walk from my house. I mean, you can drive there in like 5 minutes.
Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so
Gary,
it's great.
Remember the New Year's Eve gig we did? I played saxophone, but you played piano. Yeah.
That's right. With Carp. It was you, me, and Carp.
Wow.
That gig came that day. It was like they frantically needed somebody, and none of us were working.
That's so great.
So it was like
kept us out of trouble.
It sure did.
All three of you guys have solo albums. Do you use the piano to write, or how do you write? Brandon, how do you?
They're all different. There were some things early on that I kind of got because I had a Fender Rhodes in my room at my folks' place, and so I used to love playing that thing. And I would, so I developed a lot of on the Fender Rhodes and just these weird little patterns that I'd work out, and then kind of fleshed them out into songs, and they were very unique, even if they weren't very musically well laid out. There wasn't a lot of musical logic in there, but they're unique.
Yeah.
And so, and then later on, I kind of do a combination of from the keyboard. I think my favorite stuff is when then I sit down and I kind of flesh it out harmonically in the keyboard.
Okay. And Eric, how about yourself?
It depends. I mean, if an idea comes and it's something that, every situation is a bit different. If you're writing something by yourself, I can play enough keyboards to be dangerous. Get kind of some. If I want to get really serious about some very deep harmony, I might have to call Brandon or Gary. But to get basic idea together or to a certain point, or if you're working with somebody else, we've all worked with Jeff Lorber, so I've got 15 records of my own, and so quite a few of those Jeff was involved with, and so every situation is a bit different. Sometimes you might wake up in the morning and you've got a whole idea and you run to the piano and kind of jot down as much as you can and kind of get it all figured out. Sometimes you just have a melody in mind or just a groove, so the rhythm might come or the melody might come or the harmony might come or it all might come at the same time.
Oh, cool. Yeah, everybody's got a different process. I think what I've heard it described as you play a ranger's piano.
A ranger, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I can play a ranger's piano. I can't do a gig, but I can.
Well, one thing I liked was when we were kids. I think you played at a bunch of the local colleges too, Gary. I think right, like making big band scenes around. I know Eric and I did in Orange. We at Orange Coast College and Tom Kubas had a great hangover at Golden West. A lot of great players, and a lot of guys went to Long Beach State. Friends of ours who they had a good program over there. So it was really a kind of a healthy scene, and it seemed I don't know how it was all coordinated, but we could just kind of go on the road and do little things. I was just playing in like top 40 bands for a while when I was 17, 18, and 19. And then when I was off the road, then I would go and kind of make the rounds with my friends and hit these, local junior college bands. Because I was at Cal State Fullerton, and right before the year was up, I got an offer to go on the road, and I took it because it was not. I think I went to the wrong school.
What was your first road gig?
My first road gig was with a band called Soul Incorporated from Santa Ana.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's time for someone to play. Who wants to go first? Gary, you're the veteran here. Do you want to play a tune?
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
I'll get it out of the way.
While Gary's setting up for you, we have some people out there. Let me do a quick shout out to our regulars. Rick is here, Kim is here, Toby and Phil are all regulars. We also have Jerry from 10 Minutes from Louisville out in southern Indiana. She says hello. And it's a kind of a small crowd tonight, but it's the good ones. So
cool. So this can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay. This is actually a tune called "Move Out," which was there's a story behind it, but it's not worth telling because it's silly. Anyhow, this is Dave Weckel is on 2 tunes on my new CD, and so Dave is on drums on this. He was kind enough to lay a track for me, and he's our mutual friend, so we all. Yeah. We all know Dave. So here we go. This is Move. And it's going to fade out, I think, for you guys, but it won't for me. So this should be interesting.
All right, man. Take it away.
Okay. Here we go. And you'll hear me play a keyboard solo, so I'll just kind of like sit there while it happens. All right.
Interpretive dance.
Hey! Killer.
I figured if you heard the audience clapping, you'd know the track had faded.
Did it fade out for you guys?
It did.
It did.
It did perfectly.
Okay.
What was the name of that track again?
It's called Move Out.
All right, right.
And it was just one of those stories like when you've taken like a 13-hour flight and you're in a jetway and there's somebody at the front like doing some shit like taking out the bags and just moving really slow. And there was some guy who was like a Eastern European guy, going, no, move out. So that's how the tune was.
It's good with the accent.
And they inspired a whole.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was like, no.
Move out.
I can't move out. Arnold, right? Move out.
Yeah, it's a great stuff, man.
Cool.
And the shared
Gary.
Dave Weckl experience too, between all of us.
Yeah.
He sure was good for my plan. I probably learned more from, night after night with him. Just we played 12 nights in a row, and I never played that long in a row. I think on one European tour, and it was one of the best things for my playing ever.
What did you learn something specific, or is it just musicality in general?
Well, I think I've talked about this before. When you are responsible for the melody and solos and in a small band, you have to respond somehow. It can't help but have a good effect on your delivery and your overall
Weckel's
conception.
Dave's work ethic, both musically and professionally, is pretty spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I don't know. Did you ever hear him make a mistake? I mean, it's pretty darn rare.
Well, I worked with him for 35 years, so
Yeah.
But hardly ever, no. I mean, the thing about Dave is that he was just, I mean, to say somebody is perfect is not really a musical way to say it, but he's just so incredibly precise, I guess is the way to say it. And so at first, and he's also very, very direct. I talked to him just an hour ago, by the way. He said, say hello to you guys.
Oh, yeah.
But he was just always very, very direct. And if I rushed on a tune, he'd say, "Man, on Matt, you're ahead." And at first, I was like, "Well, whatever, dude. Mind your own business." But then I realized that this is fantastic, and I would go to him and I'd say, "Hey, what do you think? Was I cool?"
Yeah.
And if he, a compliment from Dave would, it wasn't BS. It was like, "Oh man, you sounded great," and if he didn't think so, he would tell you, And that is the thing about Dave that that some people are a little off put by, but for no reason. I mean, it's great when somebody
he doesn't care what the situation is or who you are or what.
Right.
He doesn't
It's,
care.
it
No,
really
and
dedication
you know
to
what?
getting better.
Exactly, and I mean, anybody can BS you and say, "Oh yeah, you sound great, man," whatever. But for somebody to be, it takes a real friend to come back to be that honest with you.
Yeah, if they're right, that's
Yeah, well, yeah. He was always
lot,
right.
and he really, right, spot on in that regard.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing,
personality quirks,
specifically
like all of us.
that applies to us a little bit, is that when I first was playing with them, I guess 98, I think, after the first record, and Steve Tavoloni played on it, and he was going to go with Steve and Bob Malik. And they were putting a band together, so Steve didn't want to go on the road, and he recommended me. And, at that time, I think he had just studied and was getting the traditional grip together, because I think all the early records he did, when you guys were first playing together with Chick, he was playing match grip, right? So he, and he really dedicated himself to learning, getting the traditional thing together, because he felt he would have better dexterity. And I thought that was really cool, because I had to do something similar after I couldn't play soft enough on a film date one time, and I was playing something up in the Palm Keys on alto, and I had to play pianissimo with Jim Walker on flute and the concertmaster. And and I couldn't play soft enough, so I went home after that, and I just felt so kind of defeated. And I said, "Well, do I want to play this kind of music or not? Do I want to do this kind of work?" And I did.
Wow.
So then I kind of really studied more of the Joe Allard because I was more of a street guy. I mean, I'd taken lessons from a few guys, but never really developed. I learned more by listening and trying to imitate sounds and concepts, and really never had a formalized way of thinking about this stuff. You know.
Yeah, man.
And
Yeah, that
and
can
it
be a
helped.
very, very freaky situation when you're, you know, when
I'm
you're
so exposed, you know, and you're
Yeah.
in the middle of, and I was kind of new to everything, so I couldn't say, you know, you're at MGM and there's a full orchestra. You couldn't say that, well, you know, there's an ISO booth in the back, and I just go in there and everything would be cool. So, but it forced me to, you know, think about other equipment and learn to get my personality out there, even if I wanted to change my sound or, you know, my approach to playing and be more efficient. And as long as I could do what I wanted, what I heard, then I thought I was on the right path.
Yeah.
cool.
Cool. Well, Brandon, do you want to play a little for us?
Well, I mean, I don't really have anything to play. I'm not hawking anything right now. I don't have any product.
Well, do we have any requests?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I gotta unmute your. I'm just having audio issues in here, and I had you
there's not
muted.
really
Go ahead.
a performance.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's kind of an example as I'm working on things and I stop, and if I hear something that bothers me, if I'm on top of the time or the pitch gets away from me, then I kind of back up and, you know, and go at it again, slower and more sure, and then I try to make sure that all this stuff's working, which has really been the most difficult thing about the pandemic and all the chops, because they go away. So
Well, yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because we were mentioning earlier just the whole issue with you know, COVID chops.
yeah, it might affect people differently, but you know, for me, I felt my pitch. I was, you know, because I was still doing a pretty good amount of sessions for people that would send me tracks, and I'd play on them, and it was great. But then I'm playing, I said, wow, what? My pitch doesn't feel centered, or something, and I realized that I was not getting very far because I've kind of been more gig specific in my practicing as I've gotten older, you know, and I don't quite have the same you know, dedication to working on just long tones. I try to play musical, and I'm thinking about applying all these techniques. But like we were talking about earlier, you know, gig chops are different than practice chops. You know, so if
No
I'm working
question.
on, so if I could just take that and something like that and then slow it way down and try to match it and take more care in the tone and placement of my fingers and the point of attack, and probably a lot of things that a lot of people, you guys may have learned from, you know, other teachers, and I was a little slow to that party, so I think
Yeah.
Yeah, you're really slow at that, Brandon.
well,
Yeah, Brandon. Yeah, you know,
Your
by the time you
fingers
get
are
some
terrible,
chops,
man.
man. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that was
One
one
of
thing.
these days,
I
you're gonna get
always,
some technique happening, man.
Well, that was one thing. I always had some speed, but sometimes, you know. So I realized that that's what I cringe at a lot of things I've done where I said, well, I'm not really developing much harmonically there, am I?
Oh man, you know, one of the beautiful things about your playing always is, I mean, you too, Gary, of course, but you got such a voice. I mean, I could always, you know, two notes. It's Brandon. It's Brandon.
well,
You know.
thanks.
And it's funny because with alto players, you know, if you're playing contemporary music, funky music with alto, it's kind of, you know, Hank Crawford and David Sanborn, and it kind of falls off after that a little bit, you know, in
Yeah.
terms of like real identifiable voices, you know.
Well,
and
huge influences, you know. And
Yeah.
I will tell you that I was doing some big band at Santa Ana College years ago, and I had just heard that album that Joe Beck did with Sanborn that came out on CTI, and I loved his sound on that. And I was so enthralled by it that I learned a bunch of the solos. And of course, one of the solos just happened to work beautifully on one of the songs that I had a solo on in the big band. So what do? I play that solo like twice the same thing, and then I hear this voice from the trumpet section. It just goes, "Brandon, you can't sound like Sanborn all the time." And then years later, that same guy, I forget his name, he ends up coming to a gig. I was playing with Tower of Power out in like Riverside area or something, some gig out there, and I see this guy, and I recognize him from all those years ago, you know, from early 80s or late 70s. And I look out there and see him, and he just looked at me and smiled. Like I got
You took my advice, kid.
so,
Yeah.
but you know, I did have to consciously stop listening to Sanborn and Brecker for that matter, because there was just so much invading my own, you know, ideas that it got, you know, I had to make a conscious decision not to go after that, not be familiar, not have so much of it, you know, my playing. But there was
when I was first playing like fusion gigs like with Greg Karukas and, you know, like at Bon Appetit and Le Cafe and stuff like that, I was imitating Brandon Fields.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's like he was like the sound that everybody wanted. You know, it was like, play this like Brandon would play it. You know what I mean? And you know what though? It was cool. It was fine. You know, and you know, I learned a lot. You know, Michael Brecker, of course, man. I mean, geez.
Yeah.
You know,
just
I remember
everywhere.
when I first got to play. Yeah, I remember when I first got to play with Randy. I actually talked to him. I said, look, man, if I try to edit everything out of my playing that I got from your brother, man, I'm going to be.
Yep. But they did that same thing happened to them. Randy talks about, you know, doing a gig with Freddie Hubbard,
and he just sat there and went, "You sound great, man. Stop, you know, don't worry about it. Just play."
I do have an inspiring
And, you know,
story from working with Henry Mancini. The first time that I got called to do a date was probably the early. Probably like 83 or 84, 85, somewhere around there. It's a film date. And I show up, and the music, I got hired for that to sound like Sanborn. And I sit down at my spot, and the music says a la Sanborn at the top. You know, so I you know, I did my thing, but it was kind of, you know, that's not a reach anyway, to have that kind of influence. So, but I'll tell you, I got called maybe 3 weeks later for another film date, and I walk in there, and before I even get to my station, Hank Mancini walks up, he goes, "Hey, Brandon, man, I just want you to know I went out and bought 3 of your CDs." and I really enjoyed playing. And so then I went and sat down, and the first piece of music that's on the chart says "a la Brandon" at the top of it.
Nice.
So I've used that in some clinics to just talk about about themselves and their development and finding their own voice, and inspire people to, you know, honor their influences, but eventually you got to have some of your own stuff to say.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, you can't get there. You can only get so far.
Yeah.
You know, and then you just have to, you know, even if you got all the way there, you wouldn't be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a road that has no good end. So.
And what's funny about Sanborn too is that I have an online saxophone school called through Artist Works, and I got to interview David on one of the jazz cruises. You know, I for the school I put up my phone and I just asked him if he would do it. And he said sure. And went over to his cabin, put up my phone, and we talked for about 3 hours. I was just praying to God that my phone wouldn't die because you know, it wasn't plugged in, but it hung in there. But you know, and one of the most interesting things that he really meant it too. He said, you know, I don't know what people mean when they say, you know, sound like Sanborn, sound like me. I mean, you know, I just play, and I don't have like a particularly special thing. I just kind of play, and it's no, you know, like you are. You know, you look up, you know, contemporary alto saxophone in the dictionary, and there's your picture. I mean, you're the most iconic. You know, you you know, personify that. You know, and it's really interesting. Talk about a voice, I don't know if you guys have ever heard his recording with the LSO of the Cayman Saxophone Concerto. You guys hit that from like 1978. I mean, he, I forget who he studied. I think he may have studied with Joe Allard at one point. Sanborn did.
Oh, I didn't know if he did.
And man, he should hear this because it's a classical piece, ish, but Michael Kamen, the famous film composer, wrote it for David, and it's just so. The middle movement is very, talk about like not being able to play something during with COVID chops. I mean, very after the 17-minute first movement, you go into the second movement. It's all like long tones and high and like really could be a real serious problem, and it's just unbelievable and just so gorgeous. You can tell sort of that it's Sanborn, but it's just so great. And I mean, he's a true master.
Composers have no regard for the difficulties of saxophone playing.
You're a sax player. You can do it.
Yeah.
Especially piano players. It just comes off too easy for them.
Some of those Weingart charts, for Weckel, going way up, altissimo, playing, weird passages.
Jay Oliver.
Really fast. Yeah, Jay Oliver too. Yeah.
Both geniuses, both amazing musicians.
Left-handed phrases. I'm working on something for Randy Waldman now, and just great arrangement and all kinds of odd time stuff, sprinkled around the chart. And I'm stacking a saxophone section, and I'm telling you, I'm reading these parts, and some of them just don't sound, like repeated notes on the inner voices and things like that. Stuff that I wouldn't think, like really more difficult, like. Repeated triplets are super fast, or I just because Wayne is playing on it too, and I talked to Wayne about it because he's got so many parts, and it's like seeing a 16th note run that ends on a downbeat of the next bar, but the downbeat of the next bar is a ninth above where the last note of the 16th ends. That kind of stuff. It's like wow, it's like it's stuff that just rolls off your fingers on piano, and not so with saxophone.
Yeah, that's funny, man.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to track down a studio issue.
Uncomfortable silence.
While you guys are talking. But Eric, why don't you play
Are we
something
boring
for
you?
us? No.
Are we boring you?
I'm trying to track down.
We haven't even started talking about reads yet, man.
That's why I came in person.
Oh yeah, no. Everybody's asking. They want to know what reeds you guys use.
Yeah, what kind of reeds do you use?
Medium Laveau's for me since I was a teenager.
Rick, who's one of our regulars, asked if you guys have any gigs in the LAOC area soon. I do a gig every month. I actually just did a gig at the Spaghettini in Seal Beach. Okay, cool.
And Lee Rittenhour is going to be my guest on one coming up in 2 weeks, and then if we have different guests throughout the year.
Great.
Yeah, it's my local gig.
Very cool. Yeah, he did mention Spaghettini's. I'll put some links to that in the show notes for everybody if you want to find that sort of
I've
stuff.
got some baked potato stuff. They're starting to open that up again a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Tonight's the first night.
Big night.
Tonight's
It's Doug Webb and the Doug Webb All-Stars or something tonight. So that's exciting.
I did a couple where they were half capacity, or not even half. 30 people inside, 30 people outside in the patio.
Yeah.
Oh,
How are they
I
doing
did one
at
early.
Spaghettini.
I did one. Well, we were playing outside until recently. Now it's all open. But I did one at the Spud with Mitch Foreman, and it was all virtual. It was all virtual.
Yeah, no audience. I did one of those.
No audience at all.
I did one with Don Randy, but like early last year when he first got the system put in. So.
Yeah.
Well,
I did a live stream for my 60th birthday.
It was great.
With the whole band. Yeah, it worked out really good. But it's. But yeah, I won't be down in L.A. or Orange County probably, but I got a bunch of gigs up here. If you want to go up here,
yeah, Rick, if you want to go up north, we'll get you. Gary will tell you where.
Come to Spanish Bay every Thursday and Saturday for the foreseeable future, and watch me play acoustic piano.
It's the live at 0 BPM road trip.
You got some good piano chops, Gary. Smoking.
Well, they've gotten a lot better since I've been doing that, man. A piano trio. It's like you gotta play the melodies, and
getting
you gotta
better
play
by
solos.
force.
Yes, that's right. Baptism by fire. And I do. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of obsessive about recording myself and listening to myself and and how I'm doing. You know, I record a lot of my gigs and I listen back because I don't hear myself the same way when I'm actually playing. Not quite. You know, I might think especially on the piano, because I'm not as good at it. So I might think that something feels good, and then I hear it back and go, "Wow, you're rushing a little bit," you know. Or, you didn't really feel that at the time, you know.
Yeah.
My mentor in college used to say, "Tape don't lie."
Yeah.
So
For me, it's if I'm trying different setups, or I mean, man. So Eric and I both got our altos around the same time, these Mark VIs. And my dad thought, I'm going to get the best one there is with an F sharp key on it. And so now the big joke is every time I see him is, Dad, the F sharp, because he always talks about that instrument. And it was great. It was $425, and he went and picked it out. It was great, but it had an F sharp key, which is really, a lot of us don't like it. I don't really care for it.
A Mark VI with an F sharp key? I didn't even know they used it.
Yeah, and it gets in the way a little bit. So with that high F sharp, so mine, I had it like the lacquer stripped off, and then I had the silver plated, but it's just in the case, and I have that horn still. But I always thought that was great that Eric has been playing the same instrument, and he has seen me go through so many instruments. He used to say back in the 80s, like I said, "What horn are you on this week?"
Yeah. I used to say Brandon goes through horns more often than I go through reeds.
Yeah. Well, I've slowed that down a lot. I mean, the same tenor since 2000, the same 86,000. Wow. And then I did with Pop Manilow money. I was in New York, and I went to Roberto's, and I threw down for one of their best alto. It was 140,000. That was in the shop. So that's what I've been playing now. It's
number cool. Or dollar amount?
140 number.
Yeah.
Clarify that.
It was a little cheaper than that.
Wow. You're making some serious money on mellows.
Yeah,
wow.
That's some serious money. That should be a Stradivarius saxophone, I think.
That's better than that Iceland money, huh, Brandon?
Yeah. A little bit.
I'm playing the same Mark VI I bought from Oleg in like 1989.
Wow. Great.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's an unremarkable Mark VI too. It's not a special number or anything, but
you make it sound remarkable, dude.
Yeah. I think one time I heard Mike Brecker say one time that he knows every molecule in his tenor.
Yeah.
He goes, "I've been playing it so long, I know every molecule."
Yeah.
Right.
I've played other ones. Yeah. No.
In 1988, Chick's band was on the road with Herbie's band, and Michael was on the road with Herbie as a special guest, and so I got to know Michael really, really well. That series of tours lasted a long time, and so we had a warm-up room, for the saxophone players, and so so one day I'm looking at his horn. He goes, "You want to try it?" And I was playing tenor on the tour, and I had my mouthpiece, so I pick up my mouthpiece and his horn, and I play it. And he says, "What do you think?" I said, "Oh, well, it's great." And he goes, "Come on, what do you really think?" It was honestly probably one of the worst Mark VIs I'd ever played. It was really kind of just logy and heavy, and Then he said, "Come on, I said, "Well, I guess for me, maybe I've played some that I like better, but who cares? All that matters is how you make it sound.
I think you told me that the low end wouldn't play, or it wasn't set up.
It was crazy.
You had to really force air through it.
So then he looks at my alto, and I said, "You want to play my alto?" And he goes, "Sure." And he picks up my alto, this horn, and just takes the cap off and plays, and sounds like Michael Brecker on the alto. My reed, my mouthpiece, cool, go for it. Put some of your stuff, your mojo in my horn, whatever, dude. Yeah. And it was just,
He did have an alto. I remember seeing one time. He had invited Steve Tavallone and I over to his place. We were working with George Benson in New York. And I remember we're in, and I see a couple instruments in the hallway, and I see an alto case. I guess he used it on jingles or something. If you wanted to.
Really? Wow. Oh,
and that was his first saxophone, I guess, anyway.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. What a talent. Unbelievable talent.
Eric, you should play, man. I want to hear you tune.
Eric,
oh, really? I'm totally unprepared. I had no idea we'd be playing. Just...
Oh, look, here's my horn.
no idea. I can play a tune. I do have a pretty new record out. Came out a few months back that I got to do with Randy Brecker. actually. We finally got to get it done during COVID, and I wish I should have thought to have like a copy of it to show people. Just, we've got no copies. This is actually a CD, so you know, I don't know if you guys, it's the cover. Yeah, so now if I offer somebody a CD, they ask me for 3 more so they can put them on their table. But,
coasters.
But anyway, yeah, I'm very, very excited about it. George Whitty, genius keyboard player, produced the record. And Weckl played on this record also, some of the tunes, and John, and
that's
so
funny. I recognize that because it's Randy Brecker's Facebook.
I was going to say that. Yep.
Yeah. I never paid close enough attention to see what it was. That's great.
I know. My son took this picture outside my studio here.
So you guys did it remotely?
We did it all remote. We were going to do it live in New York, and then suddenly the world, went upside down. So it was all remote, but it was fun. It was actually really fun. Almost all the tunes actually, not every tune, but it is horn section, and so when we were doing it, but when we were getting ready to do it, we were deciding how we were going to do it logistically, and I said, I think it's a really good idea, Brandy, that you play your parts first, and I'll match you. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a little worse. You could have somebody worse to follow phrasing and time and feel than Randy Brecker, Yeah. And that was great. I sat in this chair doing the whole record, playing, like you were saying, stacking parts, and just getting to be that deep into one of the great players in terms of feel and pitch. And every note was, I'm not just saying that. I mean, every note was spot on. If there was a problem, it wasn't him, pitch-wise or time-wise or anything. So that was it was just unfortunate that we didn't get to play live on the record, but a really fortunate thing.
So did George prepare all the tracks and then send them off to everybody, or?
Yeah.
How did it work?
Yeah. And the tracks that, we all did the tracks that Dave and John played on, did it in their places,
Great.
And but this track, actually, truth be told, it's all George. It's just me and Randy and George created the drum tracks and the whole schmear. So this is this is actually a Brecker Brothers tune called "You Got to Give It." It's from the Détente, right? Exactly, from 1980. So hit a couple buttons here, and
Take it
here
away.
we go. You got.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Thank you.
Nicely done. Well, this
Turn off your
has
echo
been a
button.
great show. We kind of got to wrap it up because Eric has a recording session tonight, and he's going on tour tomorrow.
Well, Lottie frickin' da.
Yeah.
It just means cats are working now, which is great.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
So
How about you, Billy? Billy, you doing? How about what? You've been talking about us this whole time. What about you, man? You doing your?
I'm doing this. I spend
good.
all my time
Which is great.
working on these shows,
Yeah.
and now I have a new issue I've got to track down. Oh, probably be up all night doing that, but while you're here, before we split, let me just talk about who's coming up on the shows. Let me get this up here real quick. So, Thursday nights we do the live jazz. So this Thursday it's Hugh Smith, Tate Thomas. Saturday, 1 year jam extravaganza. I got 16 guys coming to play, 2-hour show. That'll be fun. The following Thursday is Ilya Portnoy. It's a harmonica player doing a quartet. It's going to be fantastic. And then Jazz Roundtable number 9. I haven't super confirmed this guy, but I'll tell you, he's 97, and he was actually around during the bebop era, and he knows all the cats. So he'll have some great stories. I've tried to work it out that he can make it on the show.
Nice.
Then after him, Nick Gomez, who's a young tenor player here in town. And then Dave Hill's going to be in town. He's been on the show many times before. He's going to be in from Buffalo. And that's with
Sax
Greg
player?
Karukas and Dave Hill, the guitar player with but Greg Karukas and Joel Taylor. And I think it's Ernest Tibbs on bass. But I can't remember offhand.
Cool.
Anyway, and then on this 15th of July, Don Randy is coming in with to do Acoustomania with John DePatty. So that's kind of exciting. Don was on this show a month ago. Anyway, let me get back to the guys. So I think we'll wrap it up. But I'd love to have you guys back on sometime to talk about the remote recording, because so many guys did that. And talk about the methods and the techniques and passing tracks and how you set everything up, because I know you guys are all over that right now. But
It's a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of guys have gotten a lot better at audio and video the last month or so.
Yeah.
But let's say thank you again, Brandon Fields,
Thank you.
Eric Marienthal. I get my guys together.
I didn't hear it, but okay.
Yeah.
It was a silent introduction.
There's a
You
little-
know it's you.
There's a little bit of audio
Yes.
dropout happening, and I'm gonna try. I think I know what it is, so I'll track that down and fix it. But before we go,
Oh, Billy, can I do a quick plug for my new
Please.
record here?
yes,
Yes, I have a new record coming out on Autumn Hill Records. The guy's out of St. Louis, and I got it basically through Dave Weckel, and it's coming out. We're doing a CD release party up here July 31st, and it's my local band, my local guys, but I have a lot of guests on it. Flora Purim sings a song. Dave plays on 2 cuts, and it's just really good. It's produced by Mike Lint and myself. You guys know Mike, don't you?
Absolutely.
Very well. With the college.
Yeah, and he's just such a pleasure to work with. You know,
love that guy.
his studio guitar thing is spot on. You know.
Say hi to
And so
Bean, man.
we've been I will. I'll say hi.
Please.
I told him we were doing it tonight, so but you know, he said cool, and then that's. Nice for him.
I'll, in the newsletter that goes out Monday, I'll put links to both yours and Eric's new albums out. And Brandon, if you got
Cool.
anything you want me
Thank
to
you.
put in there, I'll do that as well. But just before we go, did you guys all know Dave Stone,
Yeah.
bass player?
Yeah.
Very sad. He
A little
passed
bit,
away, so
yeah.
He passed away a few days ago, and I just that's sad. He was such a nice guy. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it was a super nice guy.
but I hate to end on a downer note. But thank you all again. I'm going to play the outro, and like I tell you every week, I pay a lot of money for this voiceover. I hope it doesn't blank out on you like my voice just did. So
Thanks, Billy.
Anyway, thank you guys, and I will.
Thank you, Billy.
Talk to
you,
you all
Billy.
Great to
soon.
see you guys, man.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Gary and Eric, man. It's been way too long.
It's been
Yeah,
fun listening to you guys
absolutely.
talk. It's great. So anyway, here's the outro,
Yeah.
and we'll see you guys soon.
All right.
Thanks for joining us at Live at 0 BPM. These videos we archived on YouTube and Facebook, so tell your friends. Coming up, 2 shows. On Thursday, June 17th, it's Hughes Smith Tate Thomas featuring David Hughes, Justin Smith, Jamie Tate, and Ben Thomas. Showtime, 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific. On Saturday, June 19th, it's the Live at 0 BPM 1-year anniversary All-Star Jam Extravaganza, featuring over 15 artists from the last year's shows. Showtime, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific. And as always, it's free, though donations are greatly appreciated. Go to live@0bpm.com for details and to sign up for our mailing list. Also, find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.